Hi all, right, in this third video of this week I'm going to be talking through quite a difficult issue. So this is another technical video, and as I've already said, if you're not really keen on this technical stuff, then you can skip this one and just go straight to the next video. But I want to include some of the technical stuff because I know that some people like it and some people find it to be perhaps the most interesting part of these debates, when you start to dig down and try to understand how the views are constructed. And there is something of what I think of genuine interest of deep interest, let's put it like that. There's something which, once you get your head round it, has got something of a revelationary character to it, I suppose. And it's that I want to draw here is a parallel between so the key thing which I'm going to time and modality. So modality is just to do with possibility and necessity. Possibility and necessity. So a modal sentence is one that says that something is possibly true or might be true, and or necessarily true. So any sentence to do with possibility or necessity is a modal sentence. And yeah, modality is something that metaphysicians have been puzzled about for a long time. And we're going to see anyway that there are these parallels between the two. And we can understand the parallels by thinking about the issues that we've just been introducing. So that is with the notion of the quantifier, along with the idea that there is some sort of a simpliciter. There is an absolutely unrestricted quantifier where we can quantify over absolutely everything that there is. So as we've just seen, if we are eternalists, that is, we think that all times are equally real, so dinosaurs exist, simpliciter, then we're going to be able to understand a past tense sentence. So let's put our sentence in. So this is, I'm just calling it star, wasn't I? So our sentence is, come on Ben, our sentence is, I'll put it in capitals, dinosaurs existed. And I pointed out that dinosaurs existed can be understood by the eternalist, so I'll just put ET, as quantifying over a past, or if you like, the past tense quantifies over the realm of existence which is the past. So this comes out as something like, so there's our quantifier, there's our restriction to the past, there exists past something X such that X is a dinosaur. That was a way of understanding that. So all the past tense does is it focuses our attention on a particular realm of existence, i.e. the past, and we're then saying that in that realm, in the past, there exists something X that is a dinosaur. And that's supposed to be existentially committing. That means this sentence, as understood by the eternalists, commits you to the existence of dinosaurs, because this is a mere restriction on quantification. You're just restricting your attention to part of the realm of being. So if you say that there exists things in the past, then you're committed to the existence. So that is, I've said there is an X such that past dx entails that there is an X simpliciter dx, right? So because of that entailment, this is an existentially committing sentence, yeah? So to say that dinosaurs existed, then, just to keep repeat this to make it absolutely clear, or to try to say that dinosaurs existed on the eternalist view commits you to the actual existence of dinosaurs. Okay. Now obviously the presentist, who doesn't think that past dinosaurs exist, because they don't think the past exists, can't understand past tense sentences in this way. So the question is, how do they understand them? And the standard approach comes from or the traditional approach, I suppose, yeah, it's probably still the standard approach, comes from Arthur Prior, who was a wonderful philosopher. He was working in the 1950s, 60s, mainly, perhaps even earlier, 40s, 50s, 60s. And he did a lot of work in temporal logic, so how to understand temporal sentences and translate them and so on. And his way of dealing with a sentence like dinosaurs existed, he wants to then, so this gets called primitivist presentism. So Arthur Prior, primitivist presentism. Primitivist presentism, I'll explain why in a minute. So this is one version of presentism, which we'll call PP. So according to PP, the way to understand dinosaurs existed is in terms of something called a primitive tense operator. So they say, in actual fact, what it says is this was, there is an X, we can put in simpliciter there, such that X was a dinosaur. So this is understood in the present tense now. So, well, yeah, they just understood its existence simpliciter. So, what they want to say is a past tense sentence. So if I say dinosaurs exist, that's what that represents. And then the past tense is to add an operator onto that, which turns it into a past tense sentence. So this doesn't say there exists something ex simpliciter, which is a dinosaur. It rather says it was the case that there exists simpliciter, a dinosaur. And here's the key idea. Whenever we've got an operator like this, the idea is, so this, if you like, has got this is a sentence, as we say, embedded within the scope of this operator. That just means the operator is kind of applying to this sentence. So this operator has got a scope, and the scope is whatever follows it. So here we could put this sentences embedded within the scope of a tense operator are not existentially committing. Existentially committing. Right? So this, according to the Eternalist, is existentially committing because it entails this. But according to the primitive presentist, this is not existentially committing because the existential sentence is embedded within the scope of a tense operator. That's the idea. And we could record that if we like. So just as we've recorded this up here, we could record the following like this. It's not the case that brackets was, I'll just drop the okay, well, no, I won't. I'll put simpler dx entails there is an x, simpler dx. Okay, so this says basically, this one says this this sentence here entails this sentence here. That's just to say that this sentence here is existentially committing. But this tells you that this sentence does not entail this sentence, and so this sentence is not existentially committing. All right, so that's the thought. Okay, now, first of all, let me just explain why these are called operators and why they are primitive operators in this sense, or in this case. Then I'm going to clear all this off and make this parallel with necessity or modality. So, okay, why are they called, what's an operator? Well, an operator just is anything that you add to a sentence that then creates a new sentence. So, I'll tell you what, maybe I will just clear this off. So let me give an example. So, it is not the case that, put that in quote marks, that's an operator. What it does is, if you take any sentence you like and you add that to it, so any declarative sentence, and you add that to it, it creates a new sentence. So, snow is white. There's a sentence. If you add that to the beginning of it, it is not the case that snow is white. You've got a different sentence, right? It's not the same sentence, it's a new sentence. So this counts as an operator, and it attaches to sentences to make new sentences. So you can add it to any sentence you like, right? Grass is green, Paris is the capital of France. I'm not here saying, of course, in this case, this operator has a very simple function. It functions so that if you have a true sentence and you add this, you get a new sentence, and the new sentence is false if the original sentence is true, you add this operator, you get a new sentence that's false. If the original sentence is false, and you add this operator, you get a new sentence that's true. So it's a sort of very simple operator. But there's no requirement that an operator affects the truth value of the sentence. So you might have something like, it is incredible that, okay, would be an operator, right? All that the requirement is that it's something that once you add it, so grass is green, that's one sentence. It's incredible that grass is green is a new sentence. Okay, that one might not, that one might affect the truth value as well, but you get the idea. It's just anything which attaches to a sentence which makes it into a new sentence. And this operator that we're talking about, it's come back, yeah, this was operator that attaches to sentences, well, okay, that's to be read, so was is to be read as, it was the case that. And that's supposed to attach to any sentence you like, to create a new sentence though. So in this case, dinosaurs exist would be our sentence, and this attaches to it to change it into a new sentence. So that sentence is false. Then we attach it was the case that to it and get the new sentence, it was the case that dinosaurs exist, or was, there is an X simp, so this is just saying the same thing, simpliciter, such that X is a dinosaur. So that's supposed to translate, it was the case that dinosaurs exist, or indeed the past tense. We do it in terms of tenses, dinosaurs existed. Right, they're all meant to say the same thing. So it was the case that dinosaurs exist, dinosaurs existed, and was, there is an X simpliciter such that X is a dinosaur, are all supposed to express the same thing. So it's an operator just because it attaches to sentences and makes new sentences. And it's a primitive operator because, at least according to Arthur Pryor and the primitivist presentists, you can't define it in any more simple terms. So there's no way of giving any kind of a further analysis of the term, or breaking it down into even more simple terms. You might balk at that. You might think, well, hang on, why should we accept this as being primitive? But you've got to accept some terms as being primitive. You can't define every single term. You can't analyse down, because in the end you're going to come down to terms that are so basic that you can't analyse them any further. Obviously, analysis can't go on to infinity. There must be some basic concepts that we use, right? And for example, a very simple thought here is, I think that the notion of identity, understood as a expressing numerical identity, right? So if I say that Superman is identical with Clark Kent, something like that, that's numerical identity. I'm saying they're one and the same person. So I don't think identity can be defined in any more basic terms. And any time you try to define identity in more basic terms, I think you end up basically just invoking the notion again. Some people, I don't know whether anyone's going to be interested in this. Some people think that you can define it in terms of what's called Leibniz's law, or the identity of indiscernibles. according to which for all x, for all y, and for all properties f, fx, if and only if fy, if and only if x is identical with y. Don't worry about this if you don't remember the logic or don't follow it. So some people think you can define identity as something that satisfies this, but of course, I mean, it already contains identity here. On top of that, you've got to understand that the two instances of the property variable, I mean, although it's quantified, they can only be substituted in this particular instance by the very same, the identical property in both cases. So anyway, it doesn't matter too much about this, but the point is, I don't think identity can be defined in any more basic terms. So generally speaking, things like, I mean, identity is at least I mean, I think it is a logical term, but things which are plausibly logical terms, or down to, once you get down to the basic terms, things that look like they very well might be logical terms, I don't think you can define them. So I think, for example, and, or, and so on, those things can't be defined. We can describe their function, but we can't define them. And I think the same is true of was. So I think it's plausible, at any rate, that was is a primitive operator. Okay. Anyway, that's their view. The view of the primitivist presentist, then, is simply that to understand past tense sentences, we need to introduce a primitive operator which attaches to present tense sentences, and it means that anything embedded within their scope is not existentially committing. So we can say that dinosaurs exist without committing ourselves to the existence, or sorry, we can say that dinosaurs existed without committing ourselves to the existence of dinosaurs. Now, obviously here I'm talking about the past quite a lot, so we're talking about the past realm of existence. All of this will also apply to the future. So, you know, as well as there being this past tense operator, there's also, so if I want to say something like outposts on Mars will exist, future tense, then, okay, I mean, if I'm convinced about the truth of that sentence, what I'm asserting, according to the eternalist, is that there exists future, right, and let's just use an O for outposts on Mars. There exists an X in the future such that X is an outpost on Mars, and this is existentially committing for the eternalist in the same way as the past tense sentence was. And the primitivist presentist says, will there exist, here they will put simpliciter, outposts on Mars. So they're going to understand the sentence as being a simple existential sentence, but embedded within a future tense operator which is not existentially committing. So all the same things apply. Okay. So now what I want to do then is to shift across and then consider some other types of sentences. And in particular, what I want to consider are modal sentences, and then to draw some parallels. So let's start with one. I mean, standard, as it's standard to talk about dinosaurs when we're talking about the past, it's also standard to talk about unicorns when we're talking about possibility. So, unicorns don't exist, but they could have done. They might have existed, as we put it. So let's record that as our new sentence, our new star sentence. Unicorns could have existed. Right? They don't exist, but they could have done. So, by the way, don't be confused by the fact that existed here appears in what looks to be a past tense construction. This is just a quirk of English grammar, that when we use a could have, we also have the verb exist in past tense form. But here it's not functioning as a past tense. To say unicorns could have existed, I don't mean to say it's possible that they could have existed in the past. I'm just talking quite generally. It might have been the case that there were unicorns, something like that. So I hope you understand. It's yeah. And yeah, we've got to understand that it's also not an epistemic sentence. I'm not saying for all we know unicorns existed in the past. Don't read it in that way, or nothing to do with knowledge. It's just a statement about the universe is such that it is possible that it might have contained unicorns. It doesn't contain them, but it might have done. Okay, so and forget whether you think that that's true or not. Let's just suppose that it's true. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We're thinking about the assertion. What does somebody mean when they assert that? But for the sake of this, let's just take it that it's true that the universe could have contained unicorns, or unicorns could have existed. The question is, how do we understand this sentence? And there are two ways of understanding it. The first one is, so we'll start off with, well, there's actually more than two ways of understanding it, but we'll start off with two of them. We'll start off with one which we might call the modal realist view. So, a famous modal realist, by the way, is one of my favourite philosophers, David Lewis. So a modal realist is the view that other possible worlds exist. And in fact they are just the same as the actual world. So if we think about, and by the way, by world here I mean entire universe, entire ways that things could have been. So we can think about the actual world as being our actual universe. And obviously within our actual universe unicorns don't exist. But on the modal realist view, there are other universes which are just as real as our universe. Right? They contain things, tables and chairs, concrete objects at any rate. They contain physical things. So, right, these aren't meant to be like, far off lands that you can see through a telescope. They're other realms of being. And some philosophers, like David Lewis, believe in them. So when we say that unicorns could have existed, their idea is that what we are actually doing, we are saying there is an X, and we can just put possible world here, such that there is an X, and this is restricting our attention to other possible worlds, such that X is a universe. X is a unicorn. So, right, the modal realist wants to say there does exist, and by the way, this turns out to be existentially committing, because again all we're doing is we are restricting our quantifier here to what exists in other possible worlds. We're saying there exists in some other possible world an X such that X is a unicorn. So this entails that, right, so according to Lewis, if we throw our quantifiers wide open, it actually means that unicorns in fact exist, simply put. Right? Of course they don't exist here in this world, but they do exist in other possible worlds. But that doesn't mean they don't exist, they do exist simpliciter, and that's supposed to be entailed by the sentence there that there is an X possible world such that X exists. Okay. On the other hand, we have people who are called actualists. And, by the way, Arthur Pryor was an actualist. So, I should also point out David Lewis is an eternalist. So, you might begin to see these parallels coming out. According to the actualist, when we say that unicorns could have existed, this is in fact to apply a modal operator to the sentence. So, the typical one that's used is a diamond. So, we have the diamond. Exists simpliciter, that's simpliciter UX, and this is to be read, it is possible that. So the diamond is just short for it is possible that, which is said to be a primitive modal operator, and we apply it to a sentence, and the same claim is made. Within the scope of a modal operator, the sentence embedded within the scope of a modal operator is not existentially committing. So, although that looks like it's an existential sentence, it says that unicorns exist because it's embedded within the modal operator. Then, in fact, it's not existentially committing. So, unicorns could have existed does not commit us to the existence of unicorns according to the actualist, but it does to the modal realist. Okay, so I hope that you can see, and maybe I'll just do this very quickly just to make this absolutely. So we've got these two sentences. I'll now relabel them. I'll call it, okay, dinosaurs. In fact, let's colour code some of this so you can see these parallels. Okay. Our first sentence is dinosaurs existed. And our second sentence is unicorns might have existed or could have existed. We could put it either way. I'll leave it as could have. Could have existed. So the first one of these is a modal sentence. So now we're going to say, well, okay, eternalist treatment of 1 says that it's to be read as there is an x such that past, such that x is a dinosaur. Whereas let's do these underneath each other. So the eternalist, reading of 2 says there is an x such that possible world. Both of these are restrictions on our quantification. Such that x is a unicorn. Whereas on the other hand, the presentist or the primitivist presentist, PP, reading of 1 is to say, no, this is to be read as was. There exists an x simpliciter. I'll just put simpler, such that x is a dinosaur. And the primitive presentist reading of 2 is possibly, so that diamond just means possibly. Let's put that in just to make it even clearer. There is an x simpliciter, that x is a unicorn. So there are these parallels, right? I hope that kind of makes sense, that there are these parallels. So we can think about it like this. If we think that time... just think about, again, here's another kind of a parallel which is instructive to consider. Think about the eternalist and what they say about the word now. The eternalist, that is the person who thinks that all times are equally as real, at least the B-theory eternalist, that is the one who doesn't believe in the flow of time, and so they kind of think that, the universe is just all laid out there. When they think that when we use the term now, it's just an indexical. That is, we're just picking out the time that we're at. Okay, so if I say, dinosaurs exist or do not exist now, all I'm saying is, at the current temporal location at which I exist, dinosaurs don't exist. Right? So now just refers to the moment at which you're at. It's an indexical. On this view, I'll tell you what, I've put some wrong things on here. I hope it didn't confuse you. This is not the eternalist, and that's not the primitivist presentist. Anyway, the point, I'll come to that in a minute. So the point being, the modal realist thinks that actually works in the same way. If I say unicorns don't actually exist, then again it's just an indexical term. It's just referring to the universe at which I exist, right? So unicorns do not actually exist just means they don't exist here in this possible world. Sorry, yeah, I hope this didn't confuse anyone. I'll come back to this. So what this was supposed to be, of course, it's not an eternalist. This is now the modal realist. So modal realist says this, and the primitivist, the actualist, as they get called, says this. Oh, why did I put that in? I'm getting all confused here. Anyway, I hope you saw the idea that eternalists and modal realists are on a par, and primitivist, presentist, and actualist are also on a par. Yeah, okay. So, all right, that's just to say that there are these parallels, and the question is whether that there's anything to be learned from this. I'm not going to go into the details. I think there is quite a lot to be learned from these parallels, and in particular about whether presentism and eternalism. We can talk about it perhaps in the seminar if enough people have been interested and watched this video. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about then in this little video here is the idea that there's another way of understanding what's going on with all of this. So yet another way. And there are some people who want to claim that in fact, so these get called, we'll deal with it first in terms of the modal one because it's the more usual view. So okay, let's go back to our modal sentence. Unicorns might have existed. Okay, I'll put it in terms of might this time. Might have existed. That just means the same thing as I said before. There was our sentence. Unicorns might have existed. And there are some people who want to say, well, I do think that this is an existential sentence. It does assert the existence, or they want to believe in other possible worlds, but they don't want to believe that they are the same kinds of things that the actual world is. So they want to say, yes, there are other possible worlds, but they're not real things like, concrete made up of physical objects. Rather, they are abstract things. So, a possible world is a real thing, but it's not a concrete thing, it's an abstract thing. So they still want to say that unicorns might have existed is to be understood in a kind of existential sense. So simpliciter, there exists possible world. So they still want to kind of take this view, there is an X possible world such that X is a unicorn. But they want to understand a possible world as abstract. And a standard way of doing this is to define a possible world in terms of sentences. So they want to say a possible world is just a complete specification of how the world could have been. So they imagine a complete and full description of how reality could have been, i.e., it contains for every sentence either that sentence or its negation. It's a complete description of a universe. And they want to say something, they want to understand this as saying something like there is a description, or let's say a complete description of how reality could have been. That includes the sentence unicorns exist. Okay? So, is this really believing in possible worlds? Well, maybe. I'm not sure about it myself, but at any rate, this is the way they want to understand. So unicorns might have existed really means something like there is a complete description of how reality could have been that includes the sentence unicorns exist. Yeah. So unicorns exist is contained within a possible description of how the world could have been, in other words. And the reason I want to just quickly raise this is because there are some people who have been attempted. So this gets called, by the way, ersatz modal realism. So it kind of believes in other possible worlds, but ersatz just means like fake. They're not genuine, concrete possible worlds. It's a bit, some people don't like the term ersatz modal realism. They think this is what modal realism really is. But anyway, that's a standard word for it. So, ersatz modal realism. Now, there are now people who are trying to develop a similar view in the philosophy of time. So there are presentists who we might call ersatzer presentists. So we had before primitive presentists. And they want to say, in a similar way, something like dinosaurs. So they believe that existed. That was our sentence, past tense. They want to say that, in fact, we can understand this in the same way as the ersatzer modal realist understands the modal sentence. And they want to say something like, there is a complete description of how the world, or how reality was, but we'll just use world, how the world was, that includes, well, in fact here they have to say true description of how the world was, that includes the sentence dinosaurs exist. Anyway, we're not going to go into great detail about this, but I just want to give you this because maybe we can talk about it a bit in the seminar. As I've said, this is something of an optional video. I think that the issues that we're getting into in this video are perhaps things that would require a more advanced course. There's lots and lots and lots of things to say about these issues, but perhaps it would be more, well, let's say not a more advanced course, but one that focuses in more on these issues. So there's probably too much to go into in detail here, but I wanted to give you a flavour of it because I love this stuff. I think it's great, and anyway, it's good to know about it. And I'll mention it in the seminar, and I'll talk about it a bit. So okay, there's the third video for this week. I'm not going to go into any more detail. The takeaway message here is, look, there are these different ways of understanding presentism and eternalism, and the standard one is the one I've described here, the primitivist, the presentist, and the standard one for the eternalist is the, in fact the only one for the eternalist really is the one, the only one for the eternalist is the one that involves the restricting, past tense sentences restrict our quantifiers over a domain of past things. Okay, thanks, and I'll move to the next video now.